Somewhere in your house right now, there's a thermostat. You've probably never once thought about what it actually means to be warm. For most of human history, that single decision, stay warm or die, was the hardest problem your ancestors ever solved. And they solved it during the coldest stretch our species has ever lived through, with no metal, no glass, no walls. Just bone, hide, and fire. What they built during the Ice Age wasn't luck. It was engineering. And most of it has been erased from the story we tell about cavemen. Let's start with the cold itself. During the last glacial maximum, temperatures on the open steppes of Eastern Europe regularly dropped to 30 or 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Not bundle-up cold. Cold that kills exposed skin in minutes. Cold that turns breathing painful. A modern person, dropped into that landscape unprepared, would not survive the night. And yet humans didn't just survive there. They raised children there, told stories there, made art there, for thousands of winters in a row. Here's the part that surprises people. They mostly weren't hiding in caves. Caves are rare, and they're not evenly spread across a landscape. On the open steppe, people had to build their own shelter from scratch. And what they built puts a lot of modern assumptions to shame. The clearest evidence comes from a scatter of sites across Ukraine and Western Russia, places like Mezhyrich and Kostenki. Archaeologists digging there found something nobody expected: houses. Not lean-tos. Not windbreaks. Actual engineered structures, built almost entirely from the bones of woolly mammoths. At Kostenki, researchers uncovered a massive circular structure built from the remains of at least 60 mammoths, skulls stacked as a foundation ring, tusks curved and interlocked to frame the walls, smaller bones packed in to fill the gaps, the whole thing wrapped in stitched hide. That's not a shelter someone threw together to survive one bad night. That's a construction project. It likely took a group of people days or weeks of coordinated labor to build. And it wasn't just about blocking wind. Fire pits have been found inside these structures, along with food remains and storage pits dug just outside. Meaning the mammoth-bone houses functioned less like a tent and more like a small, managed household, with distinct zones for sleeping, cooking, and stockpiling food through the winter. A few hundred miles away, at Dolní Věstonice in the modern-day Czech Republic, archaeologists found something just as telling. Winter settlements roughly 26,000 years old, with evidence of layered construction, hide for warmth, packed insulating material to block wind, and structural framing built to survive repeated snow load. This is also where some of the oldest known ceramic figurines on Earth were found, fired clay Venus figurines, created in kilns that reached temperatures over 500 degrees Celsius. People weren't just huddling through winter. They were running kilns. None of this worked without fire, and fire wasn't simply about heat. It restructured the entire day. For most of human history, before artificial light existed, night was long, genuinely long. 14 hours of darkness in the depths of an Ice Age winter. And there's real experimental evidence for what that does to the human body. In the early 1990s, a sleep researcher named Thomas Ware ran a month-long experiment where volunteers were kept in darkness for 14 hours a night, with no artificial light at all, as close as you can ethically get to a pre-industrial night. By the fourth week, something strange happened. Instead of sleeping straight through, the subjects split their sleep into two distinct blocks: several hours of sleep, then an hour or two of quiet wakefulness, then several more hours of sleep. This wasn't insomnia. It appeared automatically, in nearly everyone tested, once artificial light was removed, which suggests it may be closer to our default biology than the 8-hour block most of us sleep now. That waking window in the middle of the night, sitting by a fire with nothing to do but talk, may be one of the most culturally important stretches of time in the story of our species. Research on modern hunter-gatherer groups still living close to a firelit, low-tech lifestyle, like anthropologist Polly Wiesner's work with the Jew/Hoansi people of the Kalahari, found a striking pattern. During the day, conversation is almost entirely practical. Where the food is, who's doing what, logistics. At night, around the fire, conversation shifts hard towards stories, myths, histories, gossip, jokes. The fire didn't just keep people alive. It created the first stage, the first classroom, the first place stories were passed down instead of just lived through. Clothing followed the same layered logic as the shelters. Hide working tools and eyed needles found at sites across Ice Age Europe and Siberia show people were sewing fitted, multi-layer clothing, an inner layer to trap warm air against the body, an outer layer to shed wind and moisture. It's the same basic physics behind a modern winter jacket, worked out tens of thousands of years before synthetic insulation existed, using nothing but hide, sinew, and bone needles. None of it happened by accident, and none of it was permanent effort-free comfort. Building a structure like the one at Kostenki meant planning months ahead, hunting enough mammoths, curing enough hide, gathering enough fuel before the ground froze solid. Every warm night on the Ice Age steppe was the output of a long chain of decisions made back in late summer. Miss a step, and there was no fixing it once winter closed in. And then, as the Ice Age ended and forests crept back across the steppe, this entire body of knowledge quietly disappeared. Not because it failed, because it stopped being necessary. Milder climates, more trees, easier shelter. The skill set that had kept people alive through the harshest climate our species has ever faced simply stopped getting passed down because nobody needed it anymore. Which is the strange part, when you think about it. Somewhere back in your ancestry, a group of people spent an entire autumn hauling bones, curing hides, and packing insulation into a wall, all so that a fire the size of a dinner plate could keep a family alive through a night 40 degrees below zero. They didn't have a word for thermostat. They had a word for survive the winter, and it meant months of planning and one very precise fire. So next time you walk past yours and bump it up 2 degrees without even looking, that's the ending to a story that took 300,000 years to write.